Hi there. I want to thank all of you for being here. Super excited to see so many people and more people just kind of streaming in. It's great to see. Um, my name is Marcus Cederstrom. I'm a folklorist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and part of the Sustaining Scandinavian Folk Arts in the Upper Midwest project. This concert with Sara Pajunen is a joint collaboration then between our project and the Society for the Advancement of Scandinavian Study. I'm joined by fellow folklorist Anna Rue, and then of course Sara Pajunen. Before we get started, we've been talking a lot lately, especially in Scandinavian studies, about migration and indigeneity and what that means for Nordic migrants to the United States. And the University of Wisconsin-Madison is located on Ho-Chunk land. There are mounds, Ho-Chunk mounds on campus. There's a deep and complicated history there. And so I like to start these things by asking people to kind of consider where they are, consider the place where you currently are. Think about the people that were there before you. Think about the things that were there before you. Think about the people who are there now, and think about the people who will be there and the things that will be there after you are gone. I think it's useful for all of us to kind of reflect on our own place in this world. It's something that Sara, I think, also does with her music and with some of her projects, especially one of her more recent projects, Mind Songs, which she might mention a little bit toward the end. But with that, I'd like to introduce Sara Pajunen. Sara is a fantastic musician, someone we've worked with a couple times on the project. She's a violinist, she's a composer, she's a visual artist, and a lot of her work is really rooted. I'm going to say this, Sara, and you can disagree with me, but rooted in place and rooted in where she is from in northern Minnesota, and the way she interacts and considers her own place in that landscape, in that land, along with her own history and heritage. With that, I think I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Sara. I do want to say quickly, we are going to be handling all questions and answers and all that through the chat because we're on this Zoom webinar platform. And then toward the end, there will be a lot of time for you to talk a little bit with Sara, and we'll let people turn on their cameras and audio and all of that. But until then, because this is a concert and presentation, we're going to keep everyone muted. So with that, Sara, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Marcus. Surprisingly, I have not been performing online at all, which means, and I haven't been performing in person, so I'm actually very excited to be able to play for you all, even though I can't see you. And I'm currently in Duluth, Minnesota. I'm looking at Lake Superior out my window here. And my family has been in this region of northern Minnesota for, depending on which family member, 120 years about. And this is a traditionally Anishinaabe land, and before that Dakota land. And there's a very rich culture and history here at the westernmost point of the Great Lakes system. And I'm having a good time being here in northern Minnesota. My life has actually been very busy lately, so I decided to start with a tune I've been playing for a long time, and a traditional Finnish tune, and a sort of meditative one. It's called Vanha häämarssi, which means Old Wedding March. And I guess after that I'll play another Old Finnish march as well. Is everything sounding okay? You can hear me? You weren't sitting in silence? Okay.
Sounds wonderful.
Thanks. Well, I come from what I would call a sort of traditional Iron Range background. I'm from the Iron Range of Minnesota, which is famous for all of the iron ore that has been taken out of the ground there. And my family worked in the iron mines, and the iron mines are still operating, although at a little less capacity than they did, especially when there was high-grade ore available. Now they have only low-grade ore, and they combine it with limestone or clay to make taconite pellets. So I will talk more about my Mine Songs project later. But I come from a Finnish background and a Slovenian background. I have 3 grandparents who are of Finnish ancestry and one whose parents came from Slovenia. And that's kind of a typical combination. In the Iron Range of Minnesota, people came from all over Europe, but Northern Europe, and then also the former Yugoslav Republic and Italy to work in the iron mine. So there's quite a mix there. So I've been involved in Finnish music since I was a child. I had a violin teacher growing up on the Iron Range who was from Finland, and so I played a lot of folk music, and I've kept with it through my adult years, in addition to other things, a lot of classical music. And I lived in Finland for many years, so that's sort of where my interest in the music stems from. And also, I think, as Marcus was sort of alluding to, the connection with history and culture, and how as human beings we need to be connected to land and to a shared culture. I believe it's what grounds us. So here in the United States, all of us, no matter our race or background, are sort of searching for that. And I think we're at a moment where we're looking towards the future, thinking of what is the United States. And so part of the playing of this Finnish folk music has been me trying to find a deep connection, older than 120 years, for myself, where I fit into this world. I'll continue with a few old Finnish polskas. Now, people often aren't familiar with Finnish polska because at the time of Finnish immigration to the United States, which the majority of it happened 1880 to 1920 or so, polskas weren't popular in Finland. There was a new kind of folk music that was popular, which I'll talk about later as well. So these might sound a little strange to you, but they're quite old, probably from the 1700s. And they were both played by a man named Takloks. those are some pretty old tunes, but they are actually from the newer tradition of folk music in Finland, which comes from Sweden and Norway. It's called the Pellimanni tradition, and that came around about when Christianity came to Finland. And in pre-Christian times, you had something called rune singing, and it's if you've ever heard of the Finnish national epic, the Kalevala, those were also sung stories. But that earlier tradition doesn't use these modern instruments. It basically uses kantele, which is the Finnish national instrument, which I actually have in the closet over there, but I won't go get it, and drums and flutes. Kayla loved the modes in those tunes. Yeah, that's true. Those are, there's also a lot of, oftentimes some pitch bending in these really old tunes, which if you listen to the Hardanger fiddle music of Norway, there's very often a lot of, not just modal, but it's not using our regular scale system. There's a lot of microtones, which I find really fascinating, which is a good segue into this instrument that I'm playing. I'm not playing a regular violin. On the wall here, we have a few regular violins, which is the modern violin. This instrument that I'm playing has 5 playable strings here on the top. And then underneath, let's see, you can see the sympathetic strings here, or resonant strings. So those you don't play with the bow, they're just resonating with the upper strings that you're playing. Obviously intervals, not obviously, but if you know something about music theory, intervals like octaves and fourths and fifths are going to make those resonate more. And this is called Hardanger de More. It was sort of made up by, well, I'm not sure, lots of people have made it up, but this particular instrument was made by a Norwegian luthier. And I'm using a Baroque style bow. So this isn't a modern style bow. You can't tighten this regularly like you would. You actually release it from here, so the tension is constantly the same. And I got this instrument last year, and actually my mom asked me, can't you play more than one instrument in this concert? And I said, actually right now, since I haven't been playing a ton in this pandemic year, I think I'm just gonna stick with one, because obviously the steps, this instrument is slightly larger than a violin, so your fingers have to get used to very, very minute little changes. Let's see, what next? Waltzes. How about some waltzes? So these are tunes that would have been popular with the Finnish people and most of Scandinavians and Nordic people that came over during the Great Migration. These are actually, I'll put 3 different waltzes together. Someone mentioned my friend and collaborator and basically mentor, Otto Järvelä, and I really learned from him to just string tunes together. Of course, that's traditional to do that, but when he performs, he'll just go from one tune to the next, depending on what comes in his head. But these ones I have planned. And the first one is actually a Swedish waltz played by the group Väsen, who I really like. And the second is a tune of Arto's, actually, called Aamuyön valssi. And Aamuyö is the sort of, I don't know what you call it, the witching hour between night and early morning. And then the last is a tune by another collaborator, Vidar, he wrote this beautiful waltz. And Vidar's around, I think he's living in Wisconsin, and he is half Norwegian and half Icelandic, and he's an incredible folk musician. Sorry for my constant tuning. It's really difficult to keep this instrument in tune. I don't think I've ever actually had it in tune. I'm not sure if I should be reading comments and responding.
We
That's
can
something-
save those for you toward the end there. But since we've got one right now, those older tunes that you played, we had a question, were those kind of pre-Pelimanni then? The tunes you said were from the 1700s?
No, they're just the beginning of Bellimanni music.
Great.
I mean, so we think of Finnish folk music as being Finnish, but really, of course, in our contained bodies, we're always thinking that there are, borders and boundaries between things. But this Finnish folk music comes from the Swedish tradition, Norwegian tradition, of course, like this, the instrument that this is modeled after, and there probably were instruments like this in existence in the Baroque period. It's from Italy, so I mean, it's all a big mix of things historically, but those types of tunes would sort of denote the beginning of this Bellimanni style because they were played on a fiddle which had come from Southern Europe, whose precursors, by the way, are like the rebec, which comes from the Middle East, and it's just all one big Do you mind if I just take one? I'm going to mute myself in tune for one moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that okay? Is everyone okay with that? Okay.
So while Sarah does that, I want to thank. There's just been some fantastic stories and comments coming in the chat, and I wanted to just give a heads up that if you'd like to share that with the group, you can choose to send your chat to both the panelists and the attendees, or just send it to us as the panelists, and then I will see that, Anna will see that, and Sarah will see that. But feel free to chat in the chat bar there with the other attendees as well. That's totally fine and kind of fun to see. Anna's been posting a few links, including one to Sarah's website. So definitely do check that out. She's got some links there to different projects, including Mind Songs and Alatar, where you can get a couple CDs of some of the Finnish and Finnish American work that she's been doing. We've got Jennifer here saying that as a former string player, she enjoys the sound of tuning. So there you go.
Oh, sorry, Jennifer. Well, I don't know if you were tuning like in orchestral situations where everyone is just like, but I'm all by my lonesome here, so I feel a little embarrassed about tuning when everyone can listen. Okay, speaking about things being all mixed up, and so many different influences, and this modern Finnish music coming from the Nordic countries to the west. These are a few interesting tunes that I learned again from Vidar Skrede, and they are from the Finnforest. And the Finnforest, I don't speak Germanic languages except for English, but I think it's Finnskogen. I don't know how to say the O, but it's in northern Norway. And Finnish people emigrated there in the late 1500s, early 1600s to work in what was the forest industry at the time. It was slash and burn, basically, for farming. And they stayed there, and their language is now, that particular dialect is now gone, but these tunes remain. And they're really particular tunes that have an interesting beat. I've only learned these few from Vidar, and also Arto used to play one, so I'm no expert at them, but they're fun to play, and it's a... So the 3 beats of the polska get shorter as you get along in the series, so it's long, short, short, long, short, short. So I'll play a set of these Finnforest polskas. I should say that this this music is traditionally dance music. Of course, I take liberties with the beat, maybe not on that one, but on other ones, because I'm not playing for dancing. But traditionally, all of this would have been dance music, or ceremonial music, like the marches, which we are familiar with marches. What can I say about the history of Nordic folk music in general? It sort of happened incrementally, but there was a period, basically with the invention of electricity, I guess. Someone could probably correct me on this. I'm in the early part of the 20th century, where folk music started to die away, because you started to have recorded music, and ceremonies changed, culture changed. And then in the 50s, 1950s in Finland, there was a man named Konsta Jylhä from Kaustinen, which is sort of the epicenter of Finnish folk music, who had a successful quartet, and they made a record, and it became sort of a huge hit in Finland, and that started a new folk music revival in Finland. And Konsta Jylhä was actually a chauffeur for a living, so it's a very traditional bellimanni way to play for fun in the evenings or for community ceremonies and do some other sort of work during the day. So I'll play a tune of Konsta's, and then also I'll pair it with a tune by Hans Kennemark, who's a Swedish fiddler whose tunes I really love. So why not? I just want to play what I like. Hi, Kathy. Well, you can email me about a workshop. Yeah, you can. I'm definitely open to doing online and potentially in-person workshops. It would be fun to share tunes after this crazy year we've had. So we could put my email in there, or you can find it, the contact on my website. Please just be in touch, and we can get together in good community surrounding good old music. Thank you. How are we doing on time? First, I want to say thank you so much to Marcus and Anna, who I feel like have become friends, even though we haven't seen each other all that much. But I've been really thrilled by what they're doing at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in their department. The names are so long, guys. I did write them down. It's Society for Advancement of Scandinavian Studies, but I think it was Sustaining Scandinavian Folk Arts in the Upper Midwest where we had the conference, right? I don't even know when that was, but it was a great experience. And
that was 2018. Yeah.
2018.
Yep.
And they're doing really important and interesting and good work there. So be sure to keep track of them. And just thank you for asking me to do this. It's really a pleasure for me to be able to share.
We're so excited to have you. I mean, we love working with you, and it's been so fun, and just the different iterations of your different projects, and it's just amazing to see that development. So we appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks. I do have a lot of different things going on. I think maybe we're all in a bit of a transitional time. About 3-4 years ago, I decided to go back to graduate school. So I studied contemporary improvisation, which was very wide and open, and some of that is about my instrument, but a lot is also just creating new work in improvisatory ways, which for me involves environmental recordings and field recordings. So you can check out my project Mind Songs. I think the link was there, and this is an ongoing project that's really sort of about my own questioning and development and getting closer, I would say, to the environment, both man-made and natural, and just sort of learning where I came from a little better than I knew when I was a child. And I've always just loved being outside and in the forest especially, and when I was a kid I would play in the huge mine pits that were left by iron ore mining, which is an open pit mining, although initially it started underground. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I'll just little by little, as time allows, and I'll be releasing some pieces. Do we have time for one more, or where? One more. All right, well, I've played this song so much in my life, and I know this was billed as Finnish and Finnish American tunes, so I thought I really have to do this one, which is Metsäkukkia. It's forest flowers. It's really the quintessential Finnish and Finnish American tune. Everyone knows it. It's a waltz. I have so many strings to choose from. I'm not sure what key should I play in.
was wonderful. Thank you, Sarah. We've got a bit of time left, but we also have a few questions. So I thought maybe we could throw out a couple of questions, and then we'll see if we can convince you to play another tune or not. But one of them I think ties in really beautifully with what you were just commenting about the instrument. Someone asks here, how do you know when the secondary strings are in tune when you can't, when you're not necessarily strumming them? So how do you tune an instrument when you have those additional kind of resonant strings like you were describing?
Well, you have to get under there and pluck them to hear if they're in tune. So you stick your finger in here and pluck them, or you can do it this way. They're really difficult to get in tune. I have to say I'm still learning about, there's a huge history behind instruments with resonant strings. I went to Norway 2 years ago and studied with a couple of the Hardingfele players there. So I mean the instrument and the sort of physics of it is still new to me. I can tell if it isn't resonating with itself. When they have these Hardanger fiddle competitions in Norway, they give 15 minutes of tuning time before each song because it really is that difficult to get everything to start working with itself. But yeah, you've got to get underneath there and pluck them.
Great, thanks. We also had a question about your work with Outlatar and if there are any projects on the horizon. I know there's maybe been some personal changes in Tea's life, but I'll let you.
Well, we unfortunately had, I had multiple things canceled this year, just like everyone. So an Outlatar tour in Finland and Germany was one of those that was supposed to happen this last February. And then Thea had a baby. So she's a mother now and a parent. And those tours got pushed back a few years. So just like with everything in this moment, we're just waiting to see what opens up and, you know, what comes before us. Definitely our ensemble is still active, but I would say it's probably on a bit of a hiatus.
I think that's fair. Turns out it takes a lot of work with a new baby in the house. Who knew? We had another question about the tradition of learning this music, and I wanted to know. You mentioned kind of the history of Finnish folk music and the kind of ebbs and flows and popularity and all this, and we see some of these tunes and songs end up being recorded here in the United States and put out by Columbia and different Edison and different record companies in the 1930s, 20s, 30s, 40s, right around there. So it's a really interesting history in the United States with these tunes as well. And we've talked a little bit about this with some of the other Finnish and Finnish American musicians we've worked with, like Lauluaika, who's been doing some work with songs of the Finnish migration, for example. But we had a question specifically about kind of like, how do you learn this stuff, right? Were they transcribed? Are you learning? Is it totally just the knee-to-knee method and learning it that way, or how do you kind of pick up some of these tunes?
Well, there are many different ways to learn. Most folk musics historically are oral traditions, which means they didn't use notated music. And that also is true with Finnish folk music. There are now a lot of books published with Finnish folk tunes. So you can learn that way, but really it's best to learn by ear because that's where you really get all the nuances of the music. And so you can learn from records, from recordings. You can learn from people, and you can learn from music. When I started studying Finnish folk music in 2010, I studied with Arto Järvelä, and he just handed off a ton of old Finnish recordings to me from his computer. So that's one way to really hear the old recordings, but I guess, I don't know if those were on like wax cylinder, but oftentimes they're really difficult to hear completely what's going on. And, you know, folk music is a music, because it wasn't historically written down, it's a music that has changed a lot, and each player can really do what they want to it, or at least I imagine that's how it used to be. Maybe not when you're playing with everybody, you'll play in the same way, but then somebody moves and they play the tune and they don't remember exactly how it goes anymore, and it sort of morphs into something a little bit different. So it really can be a living tradition. Of course, now in the 21st century, our life is different. So we'll see what the future holds for folk music. But it's, you know, those are those threads through time, one of those threads that I feel need to continue being shared. Because new isn't always better.
You know, I love how you noted that, you know, someone moves and plays the song maybe a little bit different. And there again, we start to see how place becomes a part of the music, and the physical movement of musicians, of individuals, and then how that affects the traditions that are constantly changing.
Yeah, and I mean, I would really call myself, you know, a Finnish American, Nordic American folk musician, because I do not play like my friends in the Nordic countries, because I have a different personal history, I have a different education, I have, you know, a whole different set of factors in my upbringing that make me play a little bit differently. So that's the truth.
That's wonderful. Do you think we could convince you to play one more tune, maybe?
Sure.
And then we'll let folks unmute and kind of chat a little more informally.
Yeah,
I put you on the spot, I'm sorry.
I can, yeah.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is we'll kind of move to a more informal chat where I might ask you, Sarah, if you could put on some headphones.
Yep, I have those crazy looking ones right here.
Yes, that's awesome. And then we'll go ahead and pop people up to panelists so they can join us and speak with all of us if you want. So give me just a second while I do that, as everyone joins and we all get situated here. I feel like this is a really wonderful way to be heading into the weekend. We've got a beautiful day here in Wisconsin, and listening to some fantastic music on a Friday afternoon is not the worst thing in the world by any stretch. So I think I've got just about everyone here, so you can unmute yourself, turn on your video if you'd like, and like I said, this is just kind of an opportunity for a little more informal chat. You can ask questions, you can comment, or whatever you like. I'm going to step back and not be as hands-on of a moderator now. So I'll open it up to folks.
Someone made a comment about Jimmy, or Jimmy. He's a really great guy. He does a lot of fun things. He's got some albums that people should check out if they have a chance. I think he has a website. I don't always understand everything he's doing because he works a lot with humorous Finnish songs, old humorous Finnish songs. But yeah, his stuff is definitely worth checking out.
Sarah, this is Jim Leary.
Hi, Jim.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Same to you. Great stuff. Since you mentioned, growing up on the Iron Range, I remember doing field work back there in the late 70s and being amazed at at the environment, also the wild combination of music with Slovenian button box players and Croatian and Serbian tamburica musicians, as well as the Finns and, some Anishinaabe people. Has any of that music, have you bumped into that or thought about working with any of that? Just curious.
Well, that's a good question, Jim. My work has gone in a little bit different direction, but yeah, it's always in the back of my mind. I played with a friend of mine, Sam Miltic, who's a wonderful jazz guitar player, but he's also very into Croatian music and plays tamburica. And then, of course, from my Slovenian side, I know some Slovenian songs that my grandmother used to sing. So I definitely have thought about delving back into that when the time is right and reconnecting with what people are doing up there. But, you know, of course, it's a lot less than it was even in the 70s. But that's a moment for, you know, new things to arise. It is an interesting part of the state up there on the Iron Range with its history.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
And I should say that Sam, as long as we're just talking about people playing music, Sam Miltich's music is really worth checking out as well. Jim, you might enjoy that if you don't know him already. Oh, yes. So Tallari, which is the resident Finnish folk music group in Kaustinen, has just had a lineup change in the past year. And the two new members are, of course, Esko and Arto Järvelä. And I know that Tallari has been streaming quite a bit online. So someone put oh, Marcus, you put it there. Great. And they're really a mainstay of Finnish folk music and playing all of the different types of tunes and using harmonium and all instruments and performing in the traditional Pellimannitalo. It's an old house from the 16th century in Kaustinen. So if you watch one of their live streams, you'll see that. I recommend that.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful setting that they've got there when they're playing. It's really fantastic. And thanks for your question, Jim. Sara, could you talk a little bit about, you mentioned it was 2010 when you kind of started learning these Finnish tunes and that. Can you talk a little bit about what led you to doing that?
I had been studying in Finland, actually. I was studying classical music in Finland. And I think I had some exposure there to what younger people were doing with the folk music. But then I guess really the catalyst was when I moved back to Minneapolis. I interned at a record company called Northside Records that was importing all of the great new Nordic folk music at the time. And I just really loved what I was hearing. And so I became interested in trying to play it myself. I remember sitting in my apartment in South Minneapolis and had to make myself a click track of 3 to try to figure out how to play polska, because I had never played anything like that before. Even though I had grown up playing Finnish folk music, it wasn't the old type of Pellimani music. And then I started a group with another Finnish American, Jonathan Rundman. We were called Kaivama. He was from is from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So the Kaivama name comes from kaiva, the word to dig, lots of mining. And we toured for quite a while. During that time, or maybe before that, is when I went to study in Finland with Arto on a grant. And then Arto and Jonathan and I ended up recording an album together and touring together, which was really wonderful. I remember that Arto was playing one of these Baroque-style bows, actually made by the same maker from Belgium. And he said, "Oh, you should really try that. You should really try that." And I was like, ugh, I was so attached to, this modern violin and the modern bow. Now, 11 years later, I have tried it. So sometimes things take a while.
That's fantastic. Thanks. And we have a shy group this afternoon.
I can't see anyone's face.
I mean, I'm really interested also in some of this new work that you're doing. The Mind Songs, I think, is just super fascinating and super fun to follow along on Facebook. And again, maybe I'm putting words into your mouth and I shouldn't be, but what I really love about it is there's this mix of the music and the sounds, obviously, but also the really wonderful visuals that you add to all of this. And I guess this is maybe a little theoretical or conceptual or whatever, but I'd be interested in hearing how you think about all those things working together as you perform as a musician.
You mean the different elements of Mind Song's work?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think I'm still figuring it out myself. I started that project, the idea of it was very intuitive for me. I have to say that as a musician, I've always felt a little frustrated by what I felt unable to express through sound, through music only, I guess, being a performer. And I've always been interested in so many other methods of expression, photography and poetry, and so I've been interested in environmental recording for some time, because for me, I mean, we have constructed human music, but also all those properties in constructed human music are existing in the world around us every day, all the things that we consider to be noise, I guess. And I really love the music of the natural world and the constructed world. So I went over to Scotland a few years ago and did a field recording retreat where I learned some techniques and kind of gathered the equipment. And then the idea for the project, like I said, just was instinctual and felt right for me to connect to place using these different media. So I don't, so far it hasn't lived in very many places, but the internet, it got a little stifled by the pandemic, but also it's just really what I would call a long rhythm project, because it's so deep inside of me and about so many things. There was one installation at an art museum in Fargo, a sound installation, and I hope to have more installation work. And in terms of live performance, it would be interesting to try that one day. Just finding I think the place that is best for people to take in that work, because I don't think that the internet is the best place, because it doesn't speak as well as coming through your computer speakers or earbuds, and you can turn it off whenever you want. So I hope to get people in a space that is curated to really curate that space for listening and observation and slowness one day.
Great, thank you. Kayla, I saw you pop in there. I feel bad kind of calling you out there, but if you had a question, go for it.
Oh, I didn't totally have a question. I guess I just wanted to say that it's really exciting to hear this combination and resurfacing of folk music in today's society, and finding ways to both love where it's come from, but also kind of where we're at now, and trying to adjoin the two. I think that's fascinating and beautiful. I study Icelandic music, and right before jumping on this, I was working on a Fulbright application, trying to do some of the similar things for Icelandic. And they have some very similar cultures and traditions around music. I think maybe Finnish has even some deeper ones with the Kalevala, but anyhow, what I guess I wondered about is that in Iceland they have, the waterfalls that are really fun to sing behind or to play music behind, in really resonant spaces. And some spaces have even been developed, man-made spaces that are sort of globes or sort of tunnel-y situations that allow for acoustic properties that you wouldn't otherwise get just out in nature, but it's using both nature and like shapes from nature, but man-made places. And so I was just curious if you have a favorite place to make music that's out in nature, whether it's kind of man-made or not, that allows you to really feel the resonance of your instrument and the music in this space.
I like that question. Yeah, thank you. I'm really like a metsäihminen, like a forest person at heart. So I really love to be in forests. And I used to play a lot outdoors and play in forests. And as I've gotten older, I don't know, that's sort of shut down. I'm not sure why. I would say that I really love to play in forests, especially the forest around my parents' place, which was also kind of my childhood home. I used to play there a lot and actually have dreams of making some sort of work in that forest. And then also, I mean, considering mine songs and these huge open pit mines I have one collaborator I've been working with, and we have talked about doing some site-specific work inside of a pit for sure, because the resonance there will be very interesting. And of course, it depends if it's acoustic or recorded music. I would prefer acoustic, something for voices and instruments, but that's true. Yeah, resonance is huge, and that used to be so important in architecture before we had amplification, the way that they used to build spaces. And still do, actually. I should say people still do that, orchestral halls and whatnot, to have the perfect acoustics. I don't know anything about that. I just know they sound really good. But that's a great question. Thank you. Oh, Joseph, I wonder if you're talking about... You might be talking about that book. Yes, this woman was not Finnish. She was from Minnesota, and it's called The Rowan Tree. That was compiled by Joyce Hakala, who is a great researcher and has also written other books. I'm not sure when Joyce did this. It's been a while now, but her name was Marjorie Edgar. I don't know if she marched the girls through the forest, but she was a Girl Scout leader, and she was very obsessed with Finnish folk music and collected all these different tunes. So I've used quite a bit from this book too, and Joyce just did a magnificent job. So that would be something I'd recommend to people as well. The Rowan Tree, it's called. Great.
Jennifer?
Marcus, you're on it.
Yeah, I'm trying. Jennifer, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, you're making me wonder whether there's a tradition of outdoor musicianship in Scandinavia. And the reason I think of that is that touring Sweden in the summertime, we would encounter in the city parks groups of fiddlers playing. And they were, in Sweden, for some reason, they all play in unison and erecting this wall of sound as they do so. And it's really quite impressive sound outdoors. Are you aware of any tradition of outdoor playing that exists in the Nordic countries?
I'm not, no more than what you're talking about, in that people, would just live indoors and outdoors. And when it was summertime, or if you had ceremonies, weddings, or in Finland, there's something called it's purpuri. It's like many different tunes and wants. The wedding ceremonies used to be incredibly long. So most of that would happen outside. And I know that about Swedish folk music. That's funny. I used to play, I learned quite a bit from the Spelmanslag at the American Swedish Institute in Minneapolis. And they told me there that harmony wasn't played in Swedish folk music until the 1950s. And we were playing harmony there, but I think as they really, really like the melody in Sweden. So somebody else might, I don't know if Jim knows, or Marcus or Anna, someone else might know about that, but I only know that people just used to spend more time outdoors. And if the weather was nice, you would be playing outdoors, but there might be more of a history there I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I see there's a lot of people on this that might be able to answer that. Carl, Jim, but I also think even about the tradition of the kind of the calling of the cows, right? And that song tradition as well, obviously very much tied to being outside and being out in nature. But it looks like Marlene might jump in.
I'm sorry, I'm busy making Finnish pickled beets, but I couldn't resist. I have to say that, you know, in the summer there's laivatanssi in Finland, and everyone's dancing outside all summer, and it's with live music. So that's probably one form that it's in nowadays, but I think that came from the past. And even nowadays, that's what people prefer to do in the summer, is to go out to these outdoor pavilions. They usually have a roof, and but then they can dance all day into the night, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning or 4. So if you're in Finland, be sure you look for that. Thank you.
And you know, Joshua here notes the Spielman stemma, of course. There's Niswa stemman, for example, up in Minnesota. Carl, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I wanted to ask her about this, if she's played a Niswa stemma.
Hi, Carl. Good to see you. Wait, where did your face go?
Oh,
hi. Yes, I've played at Niswa, and you know, unfortunately, last year they and I think we're supposed to play, and then it got pushed back to this year, and again this year it's virtual. But that is a really great event that sort of typifies what we're talking about here. And about the laivatanssi, I think laivatansi, that kind of, what is laiva? Like stage, I guess.
Lava. Yeah, lava means a platform. Lava.
Right. It was also, I mean, very popular here in Finnish America, and not just Finnish America, I'm sure, but that tradition came over definitely.
I just wanted to say that the Niswa stemma happens largely outdoors. It's like 3 or 4 stages outside, and one of the coolest things about it is that long parade of fiddlers that they do at the beginning of the day. And it was also done in Scandinavia, those kinds of festivals where they do them indoors and outdoors, and it's really quite wonderful. While we're talking about it, there's that big festival in Kaustinen, of course. I'm sure you've played there, Sarah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Kaustinen Folk Music Festival is, I think, one of the largest folk music festivals in Europe, if not the largest. And I played there first when I was a child, maybe 1988 or 92.
Singing strings?
With the singing strings. We made regular trips to Finland, sure. And then I became sort of friends with the Järvelä family too, because they're really a family of 4 or 5 generation old fiddlers. And now it's just a huge, huge festival that brings acts from all over the world to celebrate folk music. And it's not completely outside. There are a lot of outdoor stages, but there are also indoor spaces. I'm not sure I haven't heard what they're doing this year. It hasn't come across my radar yet, but that's something to check out.
I think the festival was canceled last year, but have you had the chance of being in Kaustinen when the festival wasn't there, and in there like on a Wednesday night when all the people gather and they just have a spelmanslag, that gathering for the community? I was on sabbatical there in 2017 and had that opportunity, and what blew me away, absolutely shocked me, was just how local it was. How they were just people who were farmers and doing other walks of life, and they got together to play this music together, and I realized that it was just really the genuine thing, kind of the opposite of the festival, when you'd have the professional musicians on stage and so on, but just the regular people getting together. And that's why that place has become like the center place for folk music in Finland, just like the Dala province in Sweden is the center place for fiddle music in Sweden as well. But again, the other thing too, even if you have a center place like that, that folk music is in many different places as well. So It's just one of the good places, but it's a very local thing there. I was surprised. Did you ever have that opportunity, Sarah, to be there?
Yeah, I studied at Ako Opisto.
Oh, so you
the
were there. How
winter.
long did you stay there?
It was some months, but actually that's interesting because the group Yipepe, who is the sort of the successor to Konsta's group that I talked about, I know that many of those guys, although they've had a bit of a changing lineup, many of those guys aren't full-time musicians. So it is a living tradition there. And I once asked Otto what he would do if he weren't a musician, and he said like a builder or construction, which is funny because I have to say, I'm also found myself fixing houses a lot. I'm standing in one that I'm fixing right now. So that is sort of the tradition. And I just want to go back to a comment to draw people's attention to the comment from Jim, which is cool. Actually, Jim, I didn't know that. And Sydney Robertson worked with Alan Lomax, actually. So that's a pretty big deal to record Minnesota. Right, so you can find the link to the folk songs of Another America there. That's cool.
And thank you so much for your playing. It was absolutely breathtaking.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you.
Did Jennifer Atterbury have another question?
I do not. I wish I knew more about this. I love the music and thank you so much for it, but I don't have any reflections or questions for you. Just appreciation.
Sorry, I thought I saw your virtual hand up. Thank you.
That's good because music is really made to be enjoyed anyway. So let's see if there's anything else here that
Yeah, I think we're coming up on time here. So I just want to again thank everyone for being here. This was really wonderful. If anyone has any last second questions, now's the time. But thank you all. Thank you to Sarah for a wonderful concert and presentation. Thank you to the Society for the Advancement of Scandinavian Study for co-hosting this event. And of course, thanks for being here. We'll be doing more events, both, online still for a while, but also moving to some in-person and trying to maintain a nice balance so that we can have this type of accessibility. Kayla noted that the online format does allow for us to come together in community in a different way. So I appreciate you all doing that, coming together in community today with us, and for just fantastic questions, fantastic comments, and a really wonderful experience. So thank you again, and I hope to see you again very soon.